welcome to the FAFSA Leadership Lounge, where we dive into the policies shaping the votes of Florida school leaders. I'm Michelle White, Executive Director of the Florida Association of School Administrators.
And I'm Jessica Davis-Ewitz, lobbyist for FAFSA in several school districts across the state of Florida.
Well, we are going to start this week with some special session news. Governor Ron DeSantis believes the legislature left a lot undone during the regular session, maybe in the rest of the state. And as a result, that they should expect to be in Tallahassee often this spring and summer. He said, quote, "There'll be a lot of people in Tallahassee over the next 4 to 6 weeks during a press conference in Tampa."
So it sounds like there are quite a lot of things that he thinks they need to address. Among those issues, of course, is congressional redistricting. There's already a special session that's been set for that. The governor actually announced that a couple of months ago. They'll be here starting April 20th. But there is still a Supreme Court decision in Louisiana versus Callis, which DeSantis believes will invalidate the minority access congressional districts, but we don't have a ruling on that just yet. So DeSantis said there's some window of opportunity beyond that time that would exist to draw a new map, given the filing for candidates during the second week of June. Still, DeSantis anticipates action during the scheduled week of April 20th, in addition to some, quote, other issues being brought up.
And so more redistricting news. U.S. Representative Byron Donald, who, of course, is running for governor this year, also supports DeSantis's plan for redistricting. Donald said that a revised map is necessary to counter efforts in Democratic-controlled states to create advantages for the other side.
That's right. As for additional potential special sessions, DeSantis said they're probably going to have a special session to handle the budget. Obviously, that will need to get done. I don't think it's going to be the same week as redistricting, was his quote. He thinks it needs to be done sooner than that. Well, we're obviously running very close to that particular time. We're already in April. So,
Right.
What does that exactly mean? And then DeSantis, of course, said you have potentially some other issues like property tax issues to be put on the ballot, which, of course, we'll recall the House did pass a budget to eliminate property taxes. The Senate did not even have a bill. So nothing ended up happening during the regular session.
That's right. And we really have 2 full weeks of an April before that April 20th date. So we'll see. I don't see them coming up this week to be here. But he went on to say that, you've got some other things that I think fell through the cracks. And I think the voters are going to want us to look at that and get some results. And, no more posturing. Let's just get the job done, he said.
Well, it's certainly easier said than done, it seems like, right? I mean, we've had 2 sessions where we've ended with no budget. And as we discussed, I think on a previous podcast, a pretty small number of bills that ultimately went through both chambers during this session. So we shall see. But as we were speaking of Representative Byron Donalds, there was some new polling that came out from Emerson College with Representative Donalds in a big lead in the gubernatorial race that, of course, is going to be one of the big ones that we watch this year. The survey, which was conducted between March 29th and March 31st, shows that currently Donalds has 44% of support, so more than any other candidate, I think, in the race thus far.
Yeah, so some of those other candidates that are considering a run, right? They're not fully qualified, maybe. So current First Lady Casey DeSantis has 7% support. Lieutenant Governor Jay Collins and James Fishback both have 4% support. And former Speaker of the House Paul Renner has fallen to 2%. And the remaining 39% are still undecided across the state.
And I think that's probably where most people are finding themselves. There's certainly a lot of time between now and the primary in August.
And even before that June qualifying
That's right.
deadline too. So some of these candidates may end up pulling back along the way.
That's exactly right. We heard from the education commissioner this week and last week, and he was in Tallahassee at the Capital Tiger Bay Club, and he was speaking of his vision for our state and education. He spoke of tougher oversight, stricter accountability, and expanded school choice. He also defended tighter controls over education spending after a state audit found major problems with the Family Empowerment Scholarship Program, including overspending and a weak recovery of misspent funds. He said new safeguards are already in place and more are coming. He also backed recent legislation that targeted teachers unions, accusing them of prioritizing politics over educators. But Nevertheless, after all those comments, he did close by calling for cooperation, says everyone's wants students to succeed.
Well, I think those are probably already in line with the way he has been leading the department since July of 2025, and we'll see how far he keeps his foot on the gas pedal in certain areas.
Right.
But we've also got some news from the U.S. Department of Education and the changes happening there. The department is shifting day-to-day responsibility for dozens of congressionally mandated programs to other cabinet agencies, signaling a major reorganization of federal education policy under the Trump administration. Education Secretary Linda McMahon has described the move as a functional merger with staff already relocating to other agencies, stepping into expanded roles. And earlier this week, I was at the FAFSA conference, and they shared how the employees that used to be under the US DOE, many of them really have been moved to these other agencies. So they may still have even the same exact email address, actually, but they're still supporting schools and districts in the same way they were supporting them previously. It's just now being moved under a different agency. So for now, right now, from federal programs, I think the feeling at the conference was they're still being supported by some of these people at the federal level to answer questions and get back to them on certain programs.
Well, that's certainly good news for our folks in the districts that are trying to implement these programs that we know are really important and provide important funds and services for students. It looks like the biggest share of the programs is moving to the Department of Labor, which is led by former Oregon Congresswoman and former Mayor Lori Chavez DeRemer, who attended public schools and holds a business degree from Cal State Fresno. Labor will now oversee most of the K-12 programs and dozens that are tied to higher education and job training.
Yeah. So education programs for Native American students are also shifting, and they are moving towards the Interior Department under Secretary Doug Burgum, a former North Dakota governor with degrees from North Dakota State and Stanford. International education programs are moving to the State Department, now led by former Florida Senator Marco Rubio, who is a University of Florida and University of Miami graduate. And he has long supported reducing federal education footprint.
And several of the community-based K-12 initiatives are headed to Health and Human Services, which, of course, is being headed by Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He is, of course, a Harvard-educated attorney, while the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, a Yale graduate and former hedge fund manager, will oversee the federal student loan portfolio. Supporters called it streamlined governments. Critics are warning that fragments and oversight will take place at a moment of shrinking federal staff and rising uncertainty for students in schools.
Absolutely. So we'll certainly keep updating everyone on what that is looking like, and certainly provide feedback to us as well. And last week's episode of the Leadership Lounge, we talked a little bit more about those federal student loans and things like that. So I would encourage listeners, if you didn't get to listen last week to those updates, please go listen. Also, what would the Leadership Lounge podcast be without a check-in into the world of AI? It has certainly been a topic that we have talked about multiple times. And this week, the tech site govtech.com released a new report last week, and the results are very interesting. They said as artificial intelligence moves deeper into K-12 classrooms, education leaders say two extremes no longer work: ignoring AI altogether or rushing tools into schools without guardrails. Instead, a new approach is gaining ground, which is adaptive governance. The idea is to build the capacity to manage technology that changes monthly, not annually.
Leaders say AI isn't just another IT purchase. It affects students, teachers, families, and workflows all at the same time. Districts like Charlotte Mecklenburg schools are choosing a deliberate middle path, starting with stakeholder input, strong governance, and limited pilots to test that are tied to real problems. The message from experts is clear. Let's start with the problem, not the product, and focus on leadership and learning, not chasing the latest tool.
Absolutely. And, that really is going to put a lot on our school boards if they choose to go that route to kind of adapt those policies over time. And then really for our state policymakers to give just enough flexibility that school boards can do that. The other thing last week, the Supreme Court heard arguments in a case that could dramatically reshape American classrooms. The issue is birthright citizenship and the constitutional promise that anyone born in the U.S. is a citizen. If the court sides with the federal government, thousands of U.S. born children of undocumented or temporary immigrant parents could lose their citizenship or never receive it at all. And that would have an immediate consequence for schools. For students, it could mean growing up legally invisible, no citizenship, uncertain access to public services, and potentially renewed threats to their right to a free public education under longstanding Supreme Court precedents. So advocates warn it could create a permanent underclass of children with unstable futures.
And this is coming at a time when we have already seen in Florida some changes to enrollment that we think are probably tied to immigration enforcement. At least that seems to be what the forecasters have said. So, kind of more potentially another disruption in that space. For school administrators, the impact could obviously be quite important as well. Districts may face pressure about enrollment verification, student records. There might be heightened fears among immigrant families while trying to maintain, and of course, while our members and school administrators are trying to maintain safe and learning environments for these students. Legal experts say undoing birthright citizenship while also challenging undocumented students' right to attend public school could change dramatically who schools are actually allowed to serve. So the court's decision, which we expect sometime this summer, could be extremely consequential for our school districts and districts across the country.
Yeah, it is definitely scary for many of what's going to happen. And, we'll just keep updating as we hear what's happening. And then what does that mean for policies in our schools?
Yeah.
Okay, but we want to end this amazing episode of the Leadership Lounge on a great note. We have 3 things. The first is that it's National Assistant Principals Week, and we cannot thank all of our assistant principals so much for the amazing crucial role that you play in our schools, supporting principals, motivating students, creating positive learning communities. You are a part of every bit of that heartbeat in your schools, and we can't thank you enough for all that you do.
Absolutely. And we have some more good news. 20 high schools that are active in the Florida Association of Student Councils have been named National Council of Excellent Schools from NASSP. These student councils have met the requirements that include having a written constitution, regular meetings, and a democratic election process. They also have demonstrated successful sponsorship and participation in activities such as leadership development and service to their school and community.
We love to see student leadership highlighted in all the ways and that student voice. The FASC, which I'm sure our listeners know, is supported by FAFSA. Also had 6 students requested to present on a panel discussion at the National Safety Summit hosted here in Florida by the Florida Department of Education. And they got to share with leaders from around the country about school safety in Florida and what's working and how do they feel safe and how can they replicate that in other states. So it's a wonderful opportunity for these kids. We congratulate all of their hard work. And I really appreciate the advisors, including our FASC Executive Director, Dr. Melissa Son. We're so proud of all the work that you guys are doing. And we just want to thank y'all for listening. We hope you have a great week, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening to the Leadership Lounge podcast presented by the Florida Association of School Administrators. Today's podcast was hosted by Michelle White and Jessica Janasiewicz. The podcast was produced by Jeff Willoughby. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. New episodes are released each Monday. For show topics, suggestions, questions, or comments, please email communications@fasa.net. We hope you enjoyed the show.